Hello everybody and welcome to more Bandit Survivor, but just with a little bit less effort. And today we are here talking about Survivor UK Series 1 of the reboot, Series 3 if you want to be technical, where we are going to be talking about episodes 7 and 8 of week 4 of Survivor UK. So if you haven't checked out both episodes, this is going to be breaking them both down. So click off the video and then check it out once you've seen them both. And these episodes, they were okay, they were nothing spectacular. I would say episode 7 was, I don't know, a 4 out of 10. Episode 8 was a 5 out of 10 maybe. There are some very confusing things that we'll chat about that continue to crop up in Survivor UK. But firstly we have these introductions as we normally do with Survivor UK, and I've always joked about how they get a new editor in every single episode, but it is starting to really worry me how different the editing is every episode, where it's almost like a Bandit Survivor video now, where you have big text, you have the split screen for the contestants showing who swapped tribes. It's just something that we haven't seen before in Survivor UK, and kind of threw me for a loop, even though, again, I'm expecting the editing to, at this point, be different every single episode. But on the topic of the episode, we get to Lenina, where Hannah is coming to terms with Lelina blindsiding her, how Ashley, Lee and Christopher turned on her and Ren, and then obviously voted out Ren. So we do get some of that follow-up content, and then we also do get content from Tanuke talking about how the old Lenina are essentially flipping on each other, and how it was this uphill battle before then they were able to come together, and now they're doing pretty solid. On the Caledon tribe, we have Peg, Leg and Doug talking about working hard to get into the tribe's good graces, and it is quite interesting because if you don't know about the origins of this channel, this was actually supposed to be like a podcast where I would chat to Survivor contestants, kind of get some information that maybe hadn't seen the light beforehand, and get some perspectives from them. And one of the first conversations I had with Danny Massa was talking about how a contestant on the show can be able to thrive and what they can do to be able to help their positioning. And he actually gave me a really interesting response, considering a modern Survivor, again, it's all about the strategy. He actually said, just be helpful around camp. If someone needs something done, you help them out, and you just be a very agreeable person. And it seems like Peg, Leg and Doug are using the strategy, and as we see by the end of the 2 episodes, it's one that is very effective. So again, it goes to show that even though we're in 2023 of Survivor, it is important that you still have a good social game. And we have Doug talking about how he was previously in the majority on his old tribe, and now he really has to work on this new tribe. And then also he just loses his idol, where I was in talks obviously with the likes of Joe and Matt, and we were theorising that Doug's idol was something that would only last for three tribal councils, but it's the 3 tribal councils that he visits as the holder. I didn't realise it was just basically the episode 4, the episode 5 and the episode 6 tribal council. I do question if Doug knew this, because if he did know it, I think it would have been quite advantageous to swap it to Ren on the other tribe to be able to use that idol and also provide their ally with some safety. But yeah, it comes off as a very weak idol in totality, where again it's 3 rounds, and as we say with Doug, he isn't going to any of those tribal councils, so it's just a complete waste of an idol that he has. But we have Lawrence as well getting to outline why they did want to work with Doug and Pegleg for being good workers and being someone that he and Shai could see working with, and Shai also talks about how he wants Jess out. It is quite interesting because also Lawrence says that Jess placed votes against Shai in the past. Now, it could just be Lawrence misspeaking, but the only vote that we saw that Jess casted against Shai was in episode 1. Mind you, we obviously know that Jess, for the past 15 days now on the show, has been wanting Shai out. But I do wonder if maybe during the Leilani round, for example, she voted for Shai and that just wasn't shown to us as a viewer. But it is interesting. But on Lenina, we get some more content. For example, we have the Tanuke, who asks Lee about do they normally do that when bringing the tree meal back to the entire tribe, which is kind of a fun reference. I don't know if it was intentional, but a fun reference to the tree meal situation on Caledon. We have set up to Lenina winning the reward, with Christopher saying about how he wants it more than immunity, and then we also get talks about how Lenina hasn't actually won a reward challenge yet, so they really want the food, and then obviously they do end up winning. The challenge itself is the Australian Survivor 2017 Disc Challenge, the quote-unquote AK Challenge as I like to call it, where contestants have to hold a disc between the palms of their hands, connecting to contestants, and it's just a massive endurance challenge. I did like Australian Survivor's version better, where it was on top of this massive cliff and you could see the water splashing on the contestants, but this one was fine as well, and we do see that there is some interesting strategies used, such as contestants really using the throwing strategy intentionally to drop a disc and be able to add more pressure onto one disc rather than split it across both. But Lenina eventually get the Indian rewards in a challenge that wasn't super close. But then we get back to Calaton, where Nathan talks about wanting Doug and Pegleg out to keep the original Calaton numbers, which isn't a bad strategy considering that Merge was coming up in the next 2 to 3 rounds and would be advantageous for an individual like Nathan to have OG Calaton members. We have Jess outlining basically what will happen to her by the end of the episode, where Shai and Lawrence will flip on her and blindside Nathan, which does show to me that Jess does have a level of game insight. It's just the problem is, as I'll go on to later, she doesn't really know how to act on it, and I think that's kind of the fact that I don't believe Jess had that much Survivor knowledge coming into the show, where her intuition is right, and she does have a lot of good reads throughout the game, but I don't think she actually has the confidence and the knowledge about the game to be able to act on them in a way that she knows that she can see resolution with and be able to get the optimal outcome. So it is a bit worrying that we have this confessional from Jess. Even as I was watching it, I was getting very worried for her. And then on Lenina, we have the likes of Christopher last minute bringing up throwing the challenge, and they organise a wink with Ashley, which is really surprising that they told Ashley last minute, that they didn't leave more time to discussing it with the rest of the group. And I mean, I say that, but they didn't even talk to Lee or Hannah about doing it, which I think he would want to include, because if it does come off as too obviously him throwing the challenge, then Lee and Hannah could very likely flip on him. And we have talks about how Christopher wants a Calaton out. Then we get to the challenge, and this challenge is basically game changers, but it's like the Cagayan challenge, where you have to go into this massive bamboo area, you have to get out chests, swim them to shore, and then it's the Australian Survivor 2017. I'm going to say this word very lightly, but 2017 puzzle. And this is probably the closest we've seen to a puzzle on Survivor. Again, Survivor UK has not had puzzles previously throughout any of these episodes, so it is good seeing technically one arrive. Now I will say this is probably the most physical puzzle you could actually get the contestants to do. The other one is the slide puzzle challenge, which is super big and you literally need contestants to shove it. So they really are picking the most physical versions of the puzzle. I don't know if the puzzles just aren't allowed in the Dominican Republic or what, but we do eventually see one here, and it is nice. And we obviously have throughout the challenge Christopher last minute, well, we have Christopher talking about how he's going to throw the challenge, and it's interesting because he says that he looks at Ashley and they both nod their heads, even though it was very clear that winking was the idea to throw the challenge. So I don't even think Ashley was keen on throwing the challenge here. But we have the likes of Leilani as well, accidentally stepping on the Calaton mat, which is fun potential foreshadowing for her going back and working with the Calatons. We have constant reference from Joel for Christopher sucking in the challenge, and it is also fun with Joel's narration, where he has basically these moments where he's crushing over Nathan, and it's very similar to like Australian Survivor Brains versus Brawn, where we had JLP the host and he was crushing over Big D a lot, talking about how strong he was. So that was a kind of fun moment that I remember from my experience watching Australian Survivor. We have lots of funny Christopher moments during this challenge, where again I don't know ethically if it's really good for Christopher, since it is pointing at him in a negative, almost Dodo-like way. But I mean, I feel like anyway they were just going to include it because there's just so many funny moments, like Christopher saying I can't spell, we have him dancing, and then Ashley asking Christopher, can you see the pattern? No. We have Christopher acting like he's injured, only for seconds later on the show for him to be doing cartwheels. We have him wearing the goggles. It was just hysterical. Really funny moments. Something that you see from the UK television, you don't really see in Survivor US. So it is good seeing a bit of UK banter and culture coming through on the show. We have Calaton not actually getting the correct pattern, and Lolina kind of winning by accident because they come to the mat later. You can tell that Christopher was intending to lose the challenge by a second, only for them to have the correct pattern and Calaton's weren't correct. So they do go back to Tribal Council, where we have how Dog is the underdog and he's on the bottom. We have Jess content talking about being scared and not trusting in the plan. We have her asking if they should do something instead of the Calatons. Don't use my name, she says, which is really interesting. Doug really seems to want Jess on board to do Shai, and it is kind of unfortunate that Jess had kind of one foot in, one foot out, where she did seem keen on throwing Shai under the bus. I really think she was trying to get the votes onto Shai in the case of what she said was a double idol play, which, I mean, in that case, you just kind of have to firm it. I do like the fact that she was willing to throw her castmates under the bus, and it was something that, as we see from Peg, like, he was very willing to do. Doug identifies Shai as a threat. Like, I feel like if Jess and Nathan did push for it a lot more, that they could have potentially got Shai out, but again, she was just so wishy-washy, and we even see that she asks her group of Calatons about how they could do something else instead of throwing her under the bus to Peg and Doug, which is kind of weird, and she even talks about the double idol threat, because that means she's essentially trying to get one of Shai or Lawrence or Nathan to volunteer themselves as the person that's thrown under the bus to their face. We have talks about how Doug thought that the Calatons were rock solid, but now they're flipping on each other. And I really do like how Doug has this strategy. Again, I talked about it on different podcasts, about how a really advantageous strategy in Survivor is saying yes to everything. You don't have to give this whole bibliography of you agreeing to someone and really hampering on why you're going to work with them. Sometimes yes is just enough, but in certain situations saying yep, in certain situations saying yes and then giving a reason why, just to kind of show people that you're an agreeable individual and getting yourself in everyone's good books and then ask questions later. So again, I really do like Doug and Peg Leg's positioning and strategy here for this round and the next round. And really, as soon as we hear Doug saying before Tribal Council that they could pull something with 3 votes, you know he isn't going through with working with Jess, because, I mean, there's just too much of a risk at that point of Nathan, Shai and Lawrence being able to do something, and you're relying on Jess flipping away from every single Calaton to potentially leave you in the dark and out of the numbers. So again, I always knew at this point that Jess unfortunately was going home. At Tribal Council, we have Jess praising Doug and Pegleg a lot. We have Shai saying that he's voting Jess because she has too many connections on the other side, which is good game awareness by Shai. And Shai obviously is one of the bigger gamers on the cast, so it is good seeing that he's able to understand these social connections, even if, as we see from the edit, he's sort of struggling with social connections himself. It is a shame to see Jess go, and she was obviously someone that I was very high on, got a lot of great content. It was kind of confusing because, again, I always felt like Jess was being very much set up to get the advantage over Shai and Lawrence, where she was, again, this very positive individual. She was getting so much screen time it just felt unnecessary. About her personally, about even strategy, about her social game. So I do feel really bad for her, although she does come off as a bit self-righteous in her final words, saying that Shai and Lawrence are snakes, despite, throwing Shai under the bus to Doug and Pegleg. So I don't know, like, that part kind of irked me, as, like, you're playing the game, you're expected to throw people under the bus and be able to make moves out of your own self-preservation, and it did kind of harm my opinion of Jess, who otherwise a very solid social player, someone that, again, you could tell strategy, they were kind of struggling a bit, they were blindsided at the Rachel vote, but I feel like with a bit more knowledge about Survivor, they could be a very decent contestant. Then we get to episode 8, and even though I do complain about the pop music, we do have a good music choice in my opinion for I'm Feeling Good in the episode 8 kind of introduction. We get talks with Leilani, talking about every day becoming more difficult, missing her boyfriend, again, good sympathetic content for her. We have Christopher outlining his strategy of wanting to through the challenge. He says he's getting nightmares about Doug, again, really establishing their connection. As I talked about in my power rankings last week, it seems like Christopher and Doug are really being set up to be the power players, and I mean, spoilers, with Merge being next week, I feel like this is definitely set up for Christopher and Doug controlling the game to a certain extent. But we also do get a lot of negative content about Shai from Leilani, and we then get to Calaton, where Shai is in the tribe shelter. We have Doug outlining that he and Pegleg are leaving the bottom and are in the middle, so again, identifying their game trajectory. Nathan talks about being betrayed by Shai and Lawrence, and about how he wants revenge. So then we get to Lilina once again. There are talks from Lee about going for a walk and finding letters from home, and we get some really nice personal content from the contestants when they get to read their letters. I'm obviously not going to detail all of it because it is a lot of information that we do get, but we do get a lot of sympathetic content. We get to Nuke's lead with love, a message after losing her mother, which is very sweet, and she has the leading confessional and is the first one to read her letter. And again, these types of scenes aren't what I personally tune into Survivor for, and I can understand, of course, that it is a nice moment to learn about these characters, and it is good to be able to have this different side of Survivor, which can be very serious and dark at some points, seeing this kind of personal backstory to them. It did take up quite a lot of time, is the only thing, but I feel like this is a better way to introduce the characters' backgrounds than what we've kind of been seeing in Survivor UK, where it's talks and then a flashback to pre-recorded things from weeks back, talking about the contestants and their backstories. And even Survivor US, I feel like this is a better way to talk about their backstory, where they're reading a letter from a loved one and being able to talk about in the moment about what it means for them, about being able to talk about their backstory. It just feels a bit more authentic and raw, if you will. So I do like this approach of being able to tell the characters' backstories, and it could be something that Survivor US does, where for one reward they do letters from home, where again we've been missing them for quite a while, and that's how they really try and introduce the backstory for contestants. But even though we do get a lot of great content, I do have to note that individuals like Matthew, Lawrence and Hannah get noticeably less personal content than the others, so, you know, spoilers for my power rankings, but it may affect their placement because, again, personal backstory and a contestant's journey is very important for Edgecheck and winner rankings, so it is kind of unfortunate that they didn't get as much content as the others. Ashley gets a wrap-up scene on Lilina, talking about how everyone has someone at home that they're fighting for, which is a really nice moment. We have Christopher telling Hannah and Lee about throwing the challenge then later on, which we instantly have Lee being very uneasy. You can see it on his face, he's swaying about, and even though Lee is dunked on in the edit, I do agree with Lee that Christopher was kind of being a bit of a douche and very performative with how he was throwing the challenge. He really didn't need to do those cartwheels and complain about how his back was sore. And again, as I was talking about, I really feel like if Christopher came into throwing the challenge with a bit more foresight and was able to tell Ashley not just a minute before the challenge, was able to organise a plan for them, maybe a code word or like a secret way to do it, like maybe they do wink at each other and then they know, okay, we're throwing the challenge. Because again, you can see that really Lee is very disappointed at the fact that, not that we're throwing the challenge, and I originally thought that Lee was going to be very annoyed at Christopher throwing the challenge because, again, he's someone that is very much talking about how he wants to keep the tribe strong and about how he wants everyone to give their 100%. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that Lee was more so annoyed at the fact that Christopher didn't include him in the plan to throw the challenge and they could have done it as a team, which I do agree with. But I mean, you can clearly tell that Lee figured that Chris was throwing the challenge before he officially told the group. He talks about how he knew that Christopher was talking to Ashley, having one-on-ones with her, even identifies some of the things he does during the challenge, and Lee is saying that they need to do it in a better way, and he's saying that he is up for throwing the challenge, only for then this fight to break out between Christopher and Lee, where even though, again, I would objectively side with Lee. It's very clear in the edit that we're not supposed to, where we have content from Christopher saying that Lee wants to do it his own way, and that he's kind of this individual that is either his way or the highway. We have Ashley even coming into the edit to defend Christopher. So again, Christopher, I wouldn't say being painted in a good light, but as the lesser of two evils, and Lee again is probably going to end up at the bottom of my power rankings. And we do have content here about Ashley and Hannah trying to be mediators, and about how, again, Lee is going in on Chris and how Chris is not feeling heard. Back at Calaton, we have individuals like Shai saying that they're lacking in balance, which, I mean, is just the most clear foreshadowing for this season. There's so much foreshadowing towards the challenges, about who's going to win the reward challenges particularly, and what the rewards are going to be on this season, I am noticing, which hopefully they can adjust for season 2, where they're not so blatant with what's going to be coming up. But we have the challenge where Leilani is very pissed at the other tribe, and even Tanuki says they're picking off the girls. That's not fair. I do like Doug's answer to Joel about how he really liked Jess, but essentially, in not as many words of course, he says it was either him or her. And then we have really the crowning moment of the episode 7 preview and episode 8, where Lawrence says that I don't think we're misogynist line, which of course Leilani calls him out for. And yeah, that is not a good look, and we see that the other tribe really is not happy with them taking out Jess. This challenge is essentially a Survivor Classic when it rains it pours. It is an individual challenge, which is a bit weird to see because, again, they're on tribes, but essentially it's one of these challenges where it's individual, but your entire tribe has to be eliminated. So you could lose all your tribe members, but because you're good at balancing, you could end up winning it for your tribe, which is kind of interesting. But again, we just have the guy sucking compared to the likes of Leilani, who isn't even using the guide ropes and just shows how good she is at balancing challenges. We kind of got foreshadowing towards this earlier on in the season, where Leilani was saying that she really enjoyed the, I believe it was episode 4 balance challenge, where they had to do the block stack. And even after Lenina wins the challenge, obviously, Leilani calls the guys out after the challenge saying that Jess was really good at balance, just saying. So, again, Calaton go back to Tribal Council once again. So we have Shai and Lawrence bashing at those in the challenge site. Lawrence even says that was sexist in kind of a pitched voice, so you can clearly tell that he's making fun of the likes of Tanuki and Leilani, which I really don't think is going to set him up. It doesn't set him up well in the edits, and I also feel like merge dynamics, again, Lawrence is basically a fish out of water when he comes into the merge. We have the likes of Nathan calling out Shai for being disloyal, not being a man of his word. And then, compared to that, we have Shai thinking that he's a swing between Nathan and the Laninas. We have Nathan really calling out Shai, saying, "Do you think I was born yesterday?" in his confessional booth. Doug reaffirms Pegleg as his closest ally. Nathan says he will back Doug and Pegleg to the end of the game. And I feel like it is really interesting seeing this situation. It's kind of something that we saw before All Stars in Survivor US. This kind of mentality of, I don't care if I get voted out. I just want this person that I don't like out before me and having a worse placement than me, where again Nathan basically says, I don't care if I'm voted out soon, I just want Shai to go out before me. So that was kind of funny. But we do get the Tribal Council, where Joel calls the challenge a real effing fail, which I found funny that Joel is having to censor himself. We have Lawrence calling the girls' response naive, and the girls were bashing on them for voting out Jess. Again, not really the best content to be having, I'll be perfectly honest. And then we do get 3-2 vote, where Doug and Peg swing again in the middle to Nathan and eliminate Shai, which is unfortunate to see Shai go. Although again, for Doug and Pegleg, absolutely beautiful strategy, where again they side with Shai and Lawrence. They're able to save Doug, and then they're able to swing back, ensuring that if it was a 10-person merge, Nathan and Lawrence are so against each other that they're never going to go into a tiebreaker. And now you've got the most solidified duo with Pegleg, someone that you know isn't going to break away from you. So essentially you get to pick your third for the 10-person merge. Again, it doesn't entirely work out because they're merging at 11, but I still feel like being associated with Nathan is better than being associated with Shai and Lawrence, even if you do, by an objective standpoint, have one more number. Again, those two were very much looked down, and you had a lot of people on the Lenina tribe that weren't too happy with them. It was a shame to see Shai go, and again, much like Ren, Shai was someone that was a massive fan. You could tell they were playing really hard, showed some very good game strategy. I feel like they were harmed by the game knowledge on the cast, where you could clearly tell that they were playing a bit too hard for these individuals that were very slowly adjusting to the climate of the game. And again, it was only really saved during those first few rounds because of challenge strength, and once that expired, again, his social game, or rather lack of social game, was going to catch up to him. So it is unfortunate. I do think he did lack some sort of threat management and of course social skills. In smaller groups with the likes of a Lawrence, I feel like he was able to integrate himself rather well, but I feel like with a wider majority, he kind of struggles to have those social skills, where again, of course, he's talked about being more introverted than his tribe, and I completely understand that. And I feel like it is something that if we were to see Shai again, he can absolutely rectify again. Threat management and lack of social skills with a wider majority are probably two factors that you can fix more easily compared to the likes of having to watch Survivor and actually understand strategy, or completely changing your game philosophy, as with some other contestants that have been eliminated before him. But we do get the preview for next episode and next week, where again, very obviously, we are getting the merge, as I've already talked about. 11-person merge, and we do get the pop balance challenge, which makes me think that Leilani has very good odds to win immunity, especially as she wasn't shown in the shock promo at Tribal Council without her face, so I think she could be wearing the immunity necklace. But let me know your thoughts of these episodes in the comments down below. Thank you all for checking it out. If I did miss anything, or if I didn't chat about some sort of specific stuff, I know someone last episode said a really interesting fact about how they couldn't get a boat out to the challenge, so Rachel just decided screw it and swam to shore. So thank you to whoever commented that. But again, even though it isn't a perfect season, it is good to see Survivor UK back on our TV screens, and I feel like they are going to be learning a lot of things about the show and how to bring it into the UK season 2 and on, if they are going to bring back again another series of the show. But thank you for all for watching. If you do want to check out some main channel content, I did upload a video about a week ago where we talked about ranking all 27 modern Survivor advantages. Again, very fast-paced video, something that will get you into Survivor US and kind of let you understand what advantages are happening across the water. But thank you all for watching. Have a good day. Peace!